Hello everyone, today's topic is midbrain, external features of midbrain and anatomy of internal features of midbrain. Definition: midbrain developing from mesencephalon, shortest segment of brain stem, roughly 2 cm in length approximately. It has a narrow cavity inside. This cavity called as cerebral aqueduct, which is filled with cerebrospinal fluid, connect third ventricle above with fourth ventricle below. This midbrain is present in tentorial notch, where it will be present between pons below and diencephalon above. So in this diagram we can see this area is midbrain. Cavity of midbrain is cerebral aqueduct, and above diencephalon and below presence of pons. Blockage of cerebral aqueduct, aqueductus stenosis, causes hydrocephalus. External features of midbrain. This entire midbrain contains right and left cerebral peduncles. So the main element is cerebral peduncles. External features of midbrain at ventral surface. The area which will present between optic tract, optic chiasma anteriorly and cerebral peduncles posterolaterally, this area called as interpeduncular fossa. This interpeduncular fossa again bounded anteriorly optic chiasma, anterolaterally optic tract and posterolaterally cerebral peduncles. Contents of this interpeduncular fossa are from ventral to dorsal. Most ventrally is median eminence, this is median eminence, and tuberous cinerem with infundibulum. Then dorsal to it is mammillary bodies, and dorsal to mammillary body is posterior perforated substance with lot of perforations. This posterior perforated substance will contain central branches of posterior cerebral artery. So this is all about ventral surface of midbrain, external features. Along this ventral surface, structures which will crossing cerebral peduncles ventrally are most laterally optic tract, then medial to it basal vein. Number third structure is posterior cerebral artery. Number fourth, superior cerebellar artery. Number fifth is oculomotor nerve. This yellow colored structure is oculomotor nerve, present medial to the cerebral peduncle. This is cerebral peduncle, then medial to it is oculomotor nerve. Sixth structure is trochlear nerve at the lateral border of cerebral peduncle. This trochlear nerve, only cranial nerve which will takes origin from dorsal surface of brain, remaining all the cranial nerves takes origin from the ventral surface of brain. This trochlear nerve crossing the cerebral peduncles from dorsolateral side and coming ventrally. So these are the structures which will cross ventral surface of cerebral peduncles. From lateral to medial, structures are optic tract, basal vein, posterior cerebral artery, superior cerebellar artery, oculomotor nerve along the medial border of peduncle, and trochlear nerve along the lateral border of cerebral peduncle. Now, external features of midbrain at dorsal surface. Presence of 4 colliculi, 2 superior and 2 inferior. They are, what is colliculi? They are masses of grey matter, main component of dorsal. They are main component of dorsum of the midbrain. These colliculi separated by cruciform sulcus, vertical limb of cruciform sulcus. In cephalic part, there will be presence of pineal gland. In cruciform sulcus, lower down and depression called frenulum vellae. This frenulum vellae will be present on superior, this is superior medullary velum, which form part of roof of fourth ventricle. 2 superior cerebellar peduncles, these are superior cerebellar peduncles connecting cerebellum with midbrain. So these superior cerebellar peduncles connected by superior medullary velum. From frenulum vellae, there will be crossing of trochlear nerve. This trochlear nerve will cross dorsum of superior cerebellar peduncle, then it will cross cerebral peduncle of midbrain, then it will come ventrally. So this is crossing of trochlear nerve. This trochlear nerve cross frenulum vellae, then it will cross dorsum of this superior cerebellar peduncle, and then it will cross dorsum of cerebral peduncles, then it will come ventrally. Lateral surface of midbrain. In the lateral surface, thick ridges are present. These ridges of white matter extending from lateral side of each colliculi is brachia, inferior brachium and superior brachium. The superior brachium connect the superior colliculus to the lateral geniculate body and the optic tract, and is made up of optic tract fibers. The inferior brachium connect the inferior colliculus to the medial geniculate body and is made up of auditory fibers. The superior and inferior colliculi are concerned with reflex activities triggered by auditory and visual impulses respectively. So, along the lateral surface, presence of brachia. Superior brachium connect the lateral geniculate body. Superior brachium connects the superior colliculus to the lateral geniculate body, and inferior brachium connect the inferior colliculus to the medial geniculate body. Internal features, anatomy of internal features of midbrain. In the central grey matter, there is an cavity called cerebral aqueduct. Entire midbrain is divided into 3 zones, first, second and third, 3 zones. and pigmented band-like structure called as substantia nigra will divide the most anterior crus cerebri to middle part tegmentum. So this substantia nigra, it will divide crus cerebri to tegmentum by an imaginary line from this cerebral aqueduct. The tegmentum is further separated from posteriormost tectum part. So this is tectum, this is tegmentum, this is crus cerebri, and between tegmentum and crus cerebri there is presence of substantia nigra. And what is tectum? Tectum is made up of colliculi, superior and inferior colliculi. Now, transverse section of midbrain at the level of inferior colliculi. First, we start with crus cerebri. Crus cerebri contains important descending tracts and is separated from tegmentum by the substantia nigra. In the crus cerebri, this crus cerebri contains descending fibers from cerebral cortex. Crus cerebri, medial 1/6 part, middle 2/3 part, and lateral 1/6 part. In medial 1/6 part will contain frontopontine fibers. Fibers arises from frontal lobe of cerebral cortex, cortico-pontocerebellar tract. Lateral 1/6 will contain temporopontine, paritopontine, and occipitopontine fibers, and middle 2/3 contains corticospinal and corticonuclear. Corticonuclear also called as corticobulbar tract. Corticospinal from cerebral cortex to spinal cord known as pyramidal tract, and corticonuclear from cerebral cortex to cranial nerve nuclei. So this is all about crus cerebri, anteromost part of midbrain. Substantia nigra. What is substantia nigra? Pigmented mass of cell in which majority of melanin pigment cells. It appears dark in unstained sections as neurons within it contain a pigment called neuromelanin. This substantia nigra, its dorsal margin is concave and its ventral margin is irregular, and it gives processes. The substantia nigra is divisible into dorsal part called the pars compacta and ventral part called the pars reticularis. In pars reticularis, presence of large multipolar neurons, few in number. These neurons receives fibers from striatum, basal ganglion, and these fibers called as striatonigral fibers from striatum to nigra. Striatonigral fibers in pars reticularis, and in pars compacta presence of small neurons, so many in number. These are efferent fibers, nigrostriatal fibers from pars compacta to striatum. These nigrostriatal fibers relay dopamine main element of melanin. So in this substantia nigra, pars reticularis receives fibers from striatum, striatonigral fibers, and pars compacta give efferent fibers to striatum called as nigrostriatal fibers. Nuclei closely related with central gray matter are: number 1, trochlear nerve nucleus, from which trochlear nerve passes posteriorly, decussate at superior medullary velum, and then it turns laterally and coming ventrally. Over the superior medullary velum, there is decussation of trochlear nerve. Next nucleus is mesencephalic nucleus of trigeminal nerve. Unipolar sensory neurons are present in this nucleus. Number 3rd nucleus is nucleus of dark switch. This is dark switch nucleus. Number 1 is trochlear, then mesencephalic, then dark switch nucleus. Relay fiber, it gives relay fibers to posterior commissure, reticular formation. Next nucleus is dorsal tegmental nucleus, and outside the gray matter is ventral tegmental nucleus, ventral to medial longitudinal fasciculus. Dorsal tegmental nucleus and ventral tegmental nucleus combinedly form midbrain reticular system. Another nucleus is dorsal longitudinal fasciculus of Schurz, present either side of cerebral aqueduct DLF, connects nuclei of hypothalamus to entire reticular system of brainstem, in which include dorsal tegmental nucleus and ventral tegmental nucleus. So this dorsal longitudinal fasciculus of Schurz present either side of cerebral aqueduct and connect nuclei of hypothalamus to entire reticular system. Another nucleus is interstitial nucleus of Kajal. It sends fiber to reticular formation, medial longitudinal fasciculus MLF. So this interstitial nucleus of Kajal sends its fiber to MLF. Decussation of superior cerebellar peduncle. Fibers from right and left cerebellar nuclei. Cerebellar nuclei are globus, fastigial, dentate, and emboliform. So, fibers arising from cerebellar nuclei form superior cerebellar peduncle decussation. This decussation further gives ascending fibers to thalamus and descending fibers to inferior olivary nuclear complex, reticular system of brainstem. So this is superior cerebellar peduncle decussation from right and left side cerebellar nuclei, and it gives ascending fibers to thalamus and descending fibers to inferior olivary nuclear complex and reticular system. Dorsal to this decussation is next is rubrospinal tract. fibers arising from red nucleus to spinal cord. Rubrospinal tract. Dorsal to rubrospinal tract is tectospinal tract. In the tectospinal tract, fibers arising from superior colliculi to spinal cord. Lemnisci. Lemnisci form lateral part of tegmentum. 4 in number. Most medially is medial lemniscus, contains fascicular gracilis and cuneatus. Next to it, trigeminal lemniscus. It contains ventral trigeminal thalamic fibers. And lateral to it, spinal lemniscus, contains lateral spinothalamic tract containing fibers of pain and temperature, and most laterally is lateral lemniscus. So lemnisci are 4 in number, most medially, medial lemniscus, then trigeminal lemniscus, then spinal lemniscus, then lateral lemniscus. And in this section we can also see these are inferior colliculi. What is inferior colliculi? Ovoid mass of neurons. Ovoid mass is this colliculi connected with medial geniculate body by inferior brachium. So what is colliculi? Ovoid mass. Connections of inferior colliculus. It receives afferent from lateral lemniscus, inferior colliculi of opposite side, inferior brachium, connect this inferior colliculus to medial geniculate body. What is medial geniculate body? It is posterior component of thalamus. So these are afferent connection. Number 1, lateral lemniscus. Number 2, opposite inferior colliculi, and number 3 is medial geniculate body. Efferent connections of this inferior colliculus is via medial geniculate body, auditory radiation to the auditory area of cerebral cortex, area number 41, 42. Number 2, efferent connection to inferior colliculi of opposite side. Number 3, efferent connection is ipsilateral superior colliculus. Corticonuclear fibers which will regulate the extraocular muscles of eyeball, and spinal group of nuclei which will regulate the movement of head and neck. So via this connection, the connection of this inferior colliculus with the ipsilateral superior colliculus, through this chain it will regulate the movement of head and neck towards the source of sound. So this is all about transverse section of midbrain at the level of inferior colliculus. A quick revision diagram showing anterior surface, or also called a ventral surface of interpedunculae fossa, or external surface of midbrain, and this is dorsal surface of external surface of midbrain. Along the ventral surface we found these cerebral peduncle, optic chiasma, optic tract. This is infundibulum, mammillary body, posterior perforated substance, and structures crossing the cerebral peduncles are optic tract, basal vein, posterior cerebral artery, superior cerebellar artery, oculomotor nerve and trochlear nerve. And this is dorsal surface of midbrain, presence of colliculi, cruciform circus, frenulum velli, superior cerebral peduncle, and crossing of trochlear nerve. So this is external features of midbrain along the ventral surface, along the dorsal surface, and this is cut section of midbrain showing tectum, tegmentum, crus cerebri and substantia nigra along with central gray matter and cerebral aqueduct. Structure of crus cerebri, frontopontine fibers, corticospinal, corticonuclear, temporoparietal and occipital pontine fibers. And then subdivision of substantia nigra, pars compacta and pars reticularis. Nucleus present in central gray matter, dorsal tegmental, ventral tegmental, midbrain reticular system, mesencephalic nucleus and trochlear nucleus, and decussation of trochlear nerve. Dorsal longitudinal fasciculus, interstitial nucleus of Cajal. Dorsal, this is decussation of superior cerebellar peduncle, rubrospinal tract and tectospinal tract, inferior colliculi, inferior brachium, medial geniculate body. So this is all about transverse section of